Hello all, this is John from EastCoastArmory.com, and I'm here today with a model showcase video for this 1/16 scale radio-controlled Iraqi T55. The model that you see here is a commission build, and the model was built for a private collector. Like I mentioned in my other commission build videos, I often take on commission build projects from models ranging between 1/72 scale all the way up to 1/6 scale. For pricing and availability information, that info would be best by contacting me direct from my email address, info@eastcoastarmory.com. To get an idea on exactly what type of work went into this model, let's first step back to see what the model looked like when the project first started. This model started off as a pre-built radio-controlled Hooben T55A. The T55 was a kit, or was a model that came out first in a pre-built form from the Chinese company Hooben. Few months after the pre-built tank came out, Hooben released a 1/16 scale unassembled kit of the same model. Similar to the Tamiya offerings, the model is full option. It has fully radio control, complete with sound, turret rotation, elevation, and gun recoil. The condition of the model when I first got it was a little bit of an wrecked state. The model was altogether it was still in one piece. However, a lot of the smaller details were either missing or were broken off. During the build, a lot of these pieces were replaced with new fabricated ones, and we will go over that in this video. The overall quality of the kit itself was not too bad. The model does have enough detailing to get you off the ground. However, a lot more detailing can be added. A quick walk around the vehicle. This model here is painted and marked for the Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s. For those of you who don't know, the Iran-Iraq War was a war that started in 1980 when Saddam Hussein invaded Iran. The war lasted approximately 10 years and was extremely bloody. The war ended in a virtual stalemate, and because of that war, as an interesting side note, Saddam Hussein wanted to raise oil prices to recuperate some of the finances lost during that conflict. To do that, he wanted to raise oil prices. However, Kuwait and the rest of the oil-producing countries didn't want to go along. Because of that, Saddam invaded Kuwait, thus starting the Gulf War of 1991. And the rest is history. During the war, Iraq used mostly military vehicles from the Soviet Union, like this T55 here. Iran, on the other hand, had a lot of Western tanks as well as other military vehicles from the West, such as the M60 and the Chieftain. These vehicles were left over from before the Iranian Revolution, when Iran was at the time controlled by the Shah. Getting back to the model, we'll start with the model's running gear. The model's suspension is fully functional. It features a spring-loaded suspension, which is common on all 1/16 scale tanks that are designed for radio control. The model's track has been replaced from the kit original. The kit originally came with plastic tracks, which are linked together. The plastic tracks are nice, but the aftermarket ones are made out of diecast, like this spare section here. The metal tracks give have a lot nicer weight to them and give the model more weight, which is going to be handy if driving the model off-road. You get a little bit more traction. Also, another benefit of the metal track is that when you're driving the model around and the paint scratches off of the threads, it's going to be very realistic because just like on a real tank, you're going to have real metal exposed as opposed to plastic, which will help aid the model when you start driving it around. On the model's front hull, the two lift hooks here have their small holes drilled out. The holes are present on the kit original, however, are molded solid. Drilling them out helps in the model's realism. Moving up from the tow hook, we have here the splash guard. The model supplies you with a plastic splash guard that has the detailing on it. However, on a real T55, this splash guard here was actually made out of wood. So to give the model a little bit more detailing, I replaced the plastic one with a fabricated one made out of wood. On the fabricated wooden version, I also added the brackets and fastener detail. These fasteners actually hold the wood to the brackets, and then the whole piece is then mounted to the hull. When weathering the model, I simply took some sandpaper to the edges of the wood, stressing them a bit so that some of the wood color pops out through the paint. Moving up from the wooden splash guard, we'll move up to the model's lights. Over here, we have the main headlight, we have a blackout light, and on either side of the fender, we have a cluster of convoy lights. The lights themselves have their wiring detailing that emerge from the light and enter into a conduit. The conduit then runs along the top portion here of the front hull until it ends and enters inside the vehicle into the driver compartment over here. This detailing here is all fabricated out of aluminum and wires. On the driver's side, the Convoy lighting system is very similar in that it's in a cluster and the wires just enter directly into the driver's compartment without having to go through a conduit. As we move up to the driver's hatch, we have some more wiring detailing that enters into a hub. And also we have the power cable that emerges from the driver's compartment, runs along the sponson to the tank's horn or siren, which on these T55s is mounted underneath the turret. Moving our way back on the driver's hand side, we have here the exhaust cluster. The exhaust system is fully weathered, and its faceplate here has its small snorkeling mounting holes mounted. These holes were simply drilled into the plastic with a Dremel. The weathering detailing is on both the top and the bottom of the exhaust, just like you would find on a real T55. There is as of note, for the Hooben model, there actually is a micro smoke generator option that can be fitted and also fitted to the model's electronics. Progressing our way back, we can see here some more taillights or a rear convoy light. Unlike American tanks where we have actual red and blacked out taillights, on the Russian tanks it seems to be more of this type of system that we also have on the front of the model. Added to the kit was fabricated is all the conduit and electrical wire detailing that we have here. On the opposite side of the fender, we have the model's fuel tanks. The T55, like most Russian tanks of the era, had external fuel tanks. Now, it sounds like a bad idea to have your fuel tanks mounted on the exterior of the vehicle, especially one that's going to be shot at. However, the T55 was a diesel-powered tank, and diesel fuel does not catch on fire when lit. So having the fuel cells mounted on the outside was not as flammable as some people would imagine. On the fuel cells themselves, the plumbing lines were all fabricated and were taken off of the real model, or the real vehicle. On the plumbing lines, we can also see that those small little hose clamps have been mounted that connect all the plumbing lines together. The 3 fuel tanks all connect to each other via plumbing lines that run along the model's upper hull. On the back, 2 over here, we can see that they all connect together and then enter into the vehicle at this point over here. Also, another detail that was added to the fuel lines, or to the fuel tanks, are the actual fasteners that are used to bolt the fuel tanks directly to the fenders. These small little fasteners were actually missing on the kit and were a simple addition that really does help the look of the model. In the center here of the fender are where the model's tow cables get mounted. The kit supplies you with the tow cables. The tow cables themselves are nicely done in that they're real steel cable, and on the pre-built version, only the tips are painted with the green, which is acceptable. And the only thing that was added to the cables was a simple weathering, was dry brushed on the tips, and black was rubbed into the steel cables themselves, giving them a nice dulled look to them. Moving our way to the rear of the vehicle, we have here the tow hooks. Just like on the tow hooks in the front of the model, the center holes were drilled out on both of these. Moving our way to the mud flaps, the model has the mud flaps molded in, so simply painting them black and adding a little bit of weathering to them will make them pop off of the model. Moving our way up, the model's wooden rod was added. On Russian tanks, a long piece of wood, round piece of wood, was mounted to the rear of the vehicle. This round log, if you will, was used as a tool to help the model, or to help the tank if it got stuck. If the tank were to get stuck or bogged down, the crew would remove this large, heavy timber, secure it to the track, and then use that as a way to give you more traction to help pull yourself out of a ditch or any other type of situation where you get bogged down in. The Hooben kit originally supplies you with a piece of dowel rod, which is a nice addition. However, the dowel rod was not included with the parts that I got when the model was first started. So rather than having to pick up a nice fresh piece of dowel, I instead went ahead and found a stick outside that was the perfect diameter to use on the vehicle. The addition of the stick, for one, it's really weathered, and 2, it gives it more of that replaced infield look, which was very common on these Russian-made vehicles. To mount the stick to the model, I simply drilled 2 holes into the stick where the kit lugs were to mounting the dowel rod. However, to secure them to the model, on the real vehicle were done via straps. The straps were not included with the kit, so 2 straps were fabricated out of sheet brass and then mounted over the mount as they would be on the real vehicle. Moving our way to the turret, we'll first start with the model's gun. The model's gun is the kit original and is made out of one piece of CNC'd aluminum. The barrel itself is nicely done and is perfect out of the box without any mods or tweaks needed to be made to it. The kit also comes with another nice feature, which is that of a tarpaulin. The tarpaulin is a canvas sack that usually goes over the mantlet, protecting it from the elements and also making it both weatherproof, waterproof, as well as even NBC proof if need be. The tarpaulin itself is made out of a nylon material and is a nice touch, and works very well with the model and doesn't inhibit the gun from elevating or going downward. Another nice feature that the model has is the fact that the searchlight goes up and down with the gun as it would on the real on the real vehicle. This is done via this small little arm over here. On the kit, all of these arm pieces are fabricated out of die-cast metal. However, the metal is very, very, very fragile, and on the model when I first got it, in its original state, the piece here on this arm was cracked and needed to be replaced. To replace the die-cast metal arm, I simply took a brass or an aluminum tube, which was the same diameter as the original arm, flattened either end, and drilled a hole through it. The hole would then mount into the mounts as the original one did, which was made out of die-cast. On the Searchlight itself, the original mounting system was completely destroyed, and I had to go ahead and refabricate it as close to the kit original and to the real one as possible. It was a simple fix, and the unit is all one piece. Also, which was cracked, was the die-cast arm that connected the Searchlight to the arm itself. To fix this, I actually had to bore out a small hole into the die-cast arm to fit a wire brad, which then connected the whole Searchlight system together. The Searchlight, as I mentioned before, is now fully functional with the gun, and also is designed to be slightly loose in that if it snags something or bumps into something, it'll give way a little bit rather than cracking at the point or the seam. Another little piece of detail that was added was the detail for the model's coaxial machine gun. The machine gun itself is just a simple wire brad that is inserted in the hole. The wire brad has that resembling of the end of the barrel from an SG-43, which would have been the type of machine gun which is used as a coax mount on the T55 series. As for the model's turret, the entire turret has its cast texture as well as welds added to it. To get an idea of what the turret originally looked like, we have here a kit original turret, which is left as it comes out of the box. The turret is very smooth and has no cast texturing done to it, nor does it have the welds which are present on these two steel plates which would have been fitted over the turret casting. The whole model itself, detail-wise, resembles that of some of the older Tamiya 1/16 scale kits, like that of the original M4 105, as well as even the original King Tiger. Such things as the molded-in conduits for the Searchlight and the infrared light are what kind of reminds me of that type of quality in kit. The model that I just finished over here, the whole cast texturing was fitted to the model's casted surface, which gives it for a nice realistic look. As also the welds were added where the welds would be found on the actual vehicle, which would be in this location over here. The welds were also added to around the gun mantlet, as well as what was mentioned earlier with the molded-in conduits. They were removed, and the real conduit was fitted in its place. This conduit was also welded with sculpted welds like what we have here. Another modification that was made to the vehicle was the removal of the kit original lift hooks and grab rails. In their place, new metal ones were fabricated. On the small little hooks in the back, or on the rear portion here of the turret, all of their welds have been sculpted on. Also, since we're on the back, we could also see that the conduit and the wiring for the rear convoy light that's mounted on the back of the turret was added and fabricated. On the loader side of the turret, we can see the ammunition cans for the DSHK machine gun. The ammo cans themselves are the kit original and are simply just painted and mounted to the vehicle. The model's DSHK was originally very, very basic and was missing a lot of components, such as the handle on the elevation crank on the DSHK to elevate the gun, unlike on a Browning where it would be on a spring-loaded M23 style cradle. On the DSHK, that would be facilitated by turning this crank here. It would turn a gear, which would be connected to this plate, and that would in turn elevate the gun. The gun itself was then on these springs, which would help counterbalance the sheer weight of the heavy machine gun. On the rear portion here, the spade grips were fabricated. The DSHK was very similar to the Browning in that it had two spade grips and a trigger assembly similar to the butterfly that was found on the Browning. However, on the DSHK for the vehicle mount, a small solenoid or a fire control cable was mounted to the rear portion here that emerged from the rear portion of the receiver. That cable then connected to this handle, which fired like a bicycle handle, or like a brake that you would see on a motorcycle or a bicycle. You would depress on this lever, which would in turn actuate the trigger and would fire the gun. Also, which was mounted, was the small little box assembly here, which is found on the DSHK, and I believe it swings open to have some kind of a sighting system on the inside. On the front portion here of the Dushka, we have the fabrication of the front sight post, as well as the muzzle brake both has its barrel drilled out, as well as its flash suppressor slots mounted. One nice detail that they did mold into the kit supplied DSHK are the cooling fins, which are on the barrel. While I have the machine gun off, it's important to note because to recharge the model, you open up the loader's hatch here, and you could then extract out the recharge jack. The model is powered by a 7.2 battery and is recharged by this little jack here. Simply plug it into your recharger and the model will recharge while the hatch is open. When it comes time to drive the model, simply disconnect the jack, close the hatch, and remount your Dushka. Because the gun is not only removable for the purpose of recharging, you can also pivot the gun around on its pintle mount. The commander's hatch is also fully functional and opens up. No interior detailing is present on this model though, because it is a radio controlled model. To actually turn the vehicle on, that is facilitated from the driver's hatch. Just simply rotate it out of the way, and you have your on and off switch in here. To illustrate how the model runs, as well as how to operate the radio, we will now take the model for a test drive. To start the model, we first turn on the radio, and then we turn on the power switch, which was accessed, like was mentioned earlier, by rotating the driver hatch out of the way. Before you can start driving, you need to start the engine. That's done by going to this corner here on the radio. Once the engine started, this stick here is dedicated to just driving. It looks something like this. You could also stop the engine by doing it the same way you turned it on. Now the engine's off. For the other functions that are mainly in the turret, that's all done by this stick here. This corner here is the coaxial machine gun. Downward fires the main gun. When the gun fires, the tank will simulate recoil by going back a little bit. The barrel will recoil, and there's a small photostrobe in the gun that'll flash when the gun is fired. Like so. For left and right on the turret, we go left and right on the control stick. As to show the model's performance, let's put some mileage on it. Again, we turn on the model, and let's do some running. And that concludes this model showcase video for this 1/16 fully radio controlled Iraqi T55. If you like this video, stop by and like us on Facebook. Also, don't forget to check out eastcoastarmory.com for more 1/6 scale built models as well as 1/6 scale detail components. Thank you.